that if the field operator's worried about where you've got your paint from 1 week to the next, or where you bought your gun from, or anything like that, it creates a culture of sort of fear or panic, and gets people uncomfortable, and then they leave the sport. That doesn't happen in the US.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Down Under Paintball. We're sitting down this week with Bourke Grundy, one of the owners of MacDev. They're an Australian company taking it worldwide, selling guns all around the world, sponsoring some big name teams. We take a look at the behind the scenes of running a paintball gun manufacturing company and what it's like to deal with different countries all around the world. We also dive way back into the history of MacDev and what drives them to keep pushing forward with new and innovative ideas. I want to say a massive shout out to everyone on the Patreon so far. We've been having some great discussions on the Facebook page, talking about some upcoming episodes and some things that we're going to be working on in the future. Also, just want to do a massive shout out to all the people that have been getting in contact with me. Really appreciate the feedback. I've had a few people reaching out and telling me about their own stories or about people around their way that they're recommending for the show. So thank you for taking the time to let me know. If you think that you know someone that would fit for the show, don't be afraid. Always can reach out. Just find me, Scott Martin, on Facebook. Or remember, you can email the show at dupaintball@outlook.com. Thank you once again, everyone, for dropping by. We're going to jump straight into this episode of Down Under Paintball. So we're joined this week by Bourke Grundy. So welcome to the show, Bourke. How's it going?
Really well, thanks, Scott. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Oh, no worries at all. Thanks for taking the time and sitting down with me. So where are you calling in from today?
So I'm in the south of Sydney, somewhere near our headquarters. But we're in lockdown, so I'm just at home.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. So yeah, how's MacDev handling things with the lockdown? How's it affected your day to day?
It hasn't affected us too much at HQ because we're R&D mostly, so it's been business as usual for us. But the sales and marketing guys overseas have been turned upside down. But to be honest, we're doing pretty well. They're coming up with inventive ways, and they're doing cooking challenges and raffles, and they've got us making new little natty products like triggers or whatever. So in a way, we've been a bit more busy than I thought we would be.
Yeah. Well, just looking, through social media and stuff, the whole lockdown's actually it looks like it spurred quite a lot of creativity. It looks like people are coming up with all sorts of weird and wonderful things.
Yeah, it forces you to think sideways. So there's always a silver lining.
Yeah, there's who knows what'll come out of this.
Yeah, interesting times, that's for sure. I don't know what it'll do to paintball either. I think paintball's strong enough to get through it.
Yeah, well, we've seen some the GFC was a pretty big hit on the whole paintball community, and we've been recovering from that slowly. Hopefully we can see the other side of this pretty soon.
Yeah, I hope so. But yeah, maybe we'll have another boom after it.
Yeah, no, there's like just looking at even just in my space with podcasting and stuff like that, the amount of like media and just content that people are making in the realm of paintball is massive. So hopefully that does bring some new people out into the sport.
Yeah, I hope so. If it's well managed, I mean, that's always been the way with paintball because it's still growing. If we take these opportunities, we could take people that are keen to do something new and they've been sitting at home, and maybe we'll get a good number of them rush into paintball, which would be good for the sport.
Yeah, no, it's always good to see the sport grow. So Bourke, let's start with your history in paintball. How did you first get involved?
We were a design company, an engineering design company, and we got involved because somebody came in the door and asked us to make an air system for a paintball gun, and we didn't know what it was. So we made it for him. It was interesting because we didn't want to do it. We were busy at the time, and we made it for him eventually after they kind of gave us a real hard time, kept coming back. And then they took it away and came back and said, oh, it was amazing. And then about a week after that, or maybe 2 weeks, they came back and said it stopped working. And we pulled it apart to see what went wrong, and the thing was full of grass and dirt and paint and you name it. And we thought, oh, what's going on here? You can't do that to a regulator. We were making regs for laboratories mostly. And so we said, we've got to see what's going on here. So we still didn't know what paintball was, and we went to the field to see what was happening. And once we went there, that was it. We got hooked in. We enjoyed it. We wanted more of it. And one thing led to another. We sort of started making guns, and the rest is history.
Yeah. So who was that was getting you to make the tank?
So it was one of Mike Wybrew here in Sydney at Action. It wasn't he himself. It was one of his guys that was working for him. So okay. I think he'd sent him scouting around, or they were on the lookout for something. So we ended up going there, and we met Mike Wybrew, and that was how we got started. I mean, we were making the regs for them originally, and then we parted ways over time. It took about a year or so, and that's how it all happened.
Yeah, awesome. So, you say we got into it. Who's that? You and who else?
So it's a family business. So it's my dad's business, and my brother James was working in the business. I wasn't even working. I was still at university studying, but I was working part-time. So I got to see all this happen. My mum's also in the business, so we're all in there. And we've all stayed in there. My dad's just sadly passed away quite a while ago now. So soon after we made our first gun, so you got to see that happen. But we've all kept on going in the business, and it's really consumed us. We had a completely different business making engineering things. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're right.
And it just meant that we had to change entirely. Once we got into paintball, it slowly took over everything else we were doing, because there was more fun, interest, passion, and money as well in it than what we were doing. So it just changed our direction totally.
Yeah, okay. So does the company still produce things that aren't paintball?
We do, yes. So we've always been an engineering design company. There's some people that still come to us to design something special. We're almost consultants like that. We've done things for big name people like NASA or the government. So we did work on the trains. The trains had problems with the doors and all those things. So when there's a problem that no one else could solve around, then usually we sort of turn up for that. The Air Force, we're doing work for the Air Force. We haven't done anything like that for a while, but we still get the odd person coming and asking us to solve a problem, which is what James and I really enjoy doing, to be honest. That's what keeps us in paintball. It's what got us started, is that when we first saw our first gun, it was a cobbled together nightmare of parts. And James and I looked at it, and James looked at me, I remember, and he said, I could make this so much better. And we thought, well, why not just do it? And once we realized that there was a few parts to make and people would pay, the business just started.
Do you remember what that first gun was that you saw?
The first gun I saw was an auto mag.
Oh, yeah.
And closely followed, of course, by an auto cocker, because they were really the two guns around. And we looked at the two and decided that of the two guns we wanted to work on, the auto mag was what we wanted to work on, because it's about half as complicated.
Yeah.
But that ended up being not such a good idea, because the cocker was so much of a better gun. But interestingly, we decided, I don't know if you know or not at the time, but paintball, the importation of guns was illegal at the time. And so they were sort of smuggling things in, and it made guns really expensive. And we decided that to make an Australian-made gun was a good idea. And some of the old guys had whispered in our ears that there was another Australian-made gun that had been done early in the piece, and the designer had sadly committed suicide.
Okay.
It was so, yeah, the stress of it all,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
which
right.
probably should have turned us off it. But we did our first gun, and then the day that we were ready to announce it, pretty much to the day, it was within 1 or 2 days, that was Port Arthur massacre.
Yeah, right.
So everything tightened up, and we pretty much had the brakes put on everything. So we'd gone to all the trouble to design the gun, and the massacre happened, and it blocked us right out. So that was a shame. I think that's a common thread across paintball. If you talk to some of the old guys, that event changed everything.
Yeah, obviously the gun would have been semi-automatic then.
Yes, everything was mechanical, semi-auto. So that's what made it a really, really good time to be working on guns, because any little clever change to the mechanism would speed everything up, would make it feel really good in your hands. There was no electronic trickery to be done. It was filing off sears and taking a few millimeters off here or changing the shape of that. It was really interesting work.
Yeah, okay. So what sort of goes in, when you're designing this gun? Is it when you're building your prototype, is it something that you're literally hand filing, like hand shaping to like parts to it and stuff like that?
Well, no, we were really lucky that we had a CNC machine shop already, because
Yeah.
we were making the lab parts for regulators and things like that. So we had all the tools that we needed. That was the other joy of it, that when James looked at it and said, "Hey, we can do this better," he knew that he had the tools back in the shop. So we had everything computer controlled. It was just a matter of programming in what we needed. So the first thing we did was just copy an existing gun. So we made an exact copy of an auto mag, and then we just made it better and then released it as our own. So we had our own copy of the mag, which was actually much, much better.
Yeah, okay. And what was that? What did you guys name your first gun?
We called it the E-Type, which is,
E-type. Yeah,
it
okay.
still makes me laugh, because I don't know if people know this, but almost all of our gun names are a joke in some way or a tongue-in-cheek. So that's named the E-Type after the E-Type Jag, which rhymes with the mag. So
Yeah,
I guess
okay.
you get that.
Yeah,
Bit
yeah.
of rhyming slamming there for you.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, there's all these gun names out there. They've got to come from somewhere. So it's always good to find out the story behind that. So how did you guys are releasing an Australian made gun. Like, how did that, was it easy to do with the laws and stuff like that around importation?
In some ways it was easy. In some ways it was hard, because of Port Arthur. Semi-automatic guns were just, banned wholesale. So they banned all guns. So it meant for about a year, while that was quietening down, we had to lay low on the gun. But what it did mean in the long haul was that people couldn't get guns. So an Australian-made gun was a good idea. So we were selling those guns to fields and to private people who didn't want to smuggle a gun or couldn't smuggle a gun, which is how all the guns were coming in at that time.
Yeah, that's cool. So, was there a lot of meetings with the police or anything like that so that you guys could, did you have to certify them or do anything like that? Like, how does it work to release a fire, or would have been back then a firearm?
Yeah, there was a lot of work. So we had to get a license, and that's a story in itself, that there was no license for a paintball gun. So we had to get a license which would cover us for making firearms, which is a lot harder than you think. So there's a small arms factory in out in country New South Wales, and that's really the only place where they were making things, and they were making them for the police and for the military. So we needed a license which was bigger than theirs, because of the when they classed the guns, they were classing them by magazine size. So 200 rounds is a really big magazine for a firearm.
Yeah.
So that made them think, and the rate of fire was quite high as well. So when you
Yeah.
class it that way, it's suddenly a really dangerous sounding firearm. So we spent ages trying to convince the police that they weren't a death dealing machine gun. They were just a toy. So eventually we managed to get a license granted. So, and I don't think anybody else has had a license granted like we have, and we've had a few interesting times with that as well. There was a time when they wanted to take that license away from us, and we ended up with from the highest up intervention through the MPs and through the Attorney General. So we've still got a framed letter from the Attorney General on the wall allowing us special dispensation to do gun parts that I don't think anybody else would have.
Yeah, okay, that's the highest recommendation you could have, I guess, if they've cleared you for it.
Yeah, I think they just realised that it didn't make sense to put us in the same category as those guys making rifles. But
Yeah,
that's the story of paintball in Australia, isn't it? It's the classification of guns has not been right. In fact, it's probably only the last 2 years or so that they've finally got it even close to right.
Yeah, and even that, it's statewide. It's still for at the federal level, they're still considered firearms for importation and stuff. So it still is a bit disjointed when it comes to the whole country, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're completely right. But from my point of view, if I look back 20 years ago, that would have been a dream.
Yeah, no, that's it. It's and then in another 20 years, people, whatever the laws will be then, but people will probably think that what we've got to deal with now was archaic.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope everything keeps moving forward and you can just get them over the counter.
Yeah, no, it would be good. Like, I'm sure that for anyone that works in sales of paintball gear, if this has been such a turn off for so long, people rock up and say, I want to buy a paintball gun, and oh wait, you got to do what now? I've got to get a license. I've got to do a firearms training course. Like, why do I have to do all this stuff? And they just give up by the time you've finished explaining what they need to do, let alone going through with it.
Yeah, that's right. If you could buy a gun like a tennis racket, then maybe we'd have as many people playing as play tennis.
Yeah, no, that we can only hope. Yeah. So after you guys make the E-type, or what's the next step? Like, was that received well? Like, did the ball keep rolling there?
It did well, but it was only Australia because we couldn't sell it anywhere else. It was really, even though it was an improved copy of a mag, it was just a copy of a mag. So for us, we'd proven that we can make a gun, that we could make it well, all those things, but it still wasn't our gun, and that really bothered us. So we turned around and we did a lot of work on autocockers, which, as I mentioned before, is a much better gun. So we thought, well, we better make sure that we're good at this too. And we worked together with the guys who were making the autocockers, and they gave us allowance to make autocockers under license, which is another thing which I think nobody else ever had, not to my knowledge. I think Eclipse was doing it, or Free Flow as well, but they weren't actually making it under license. They were just getting them still made in the factory. But because of our special situation, being not able to import autocockers, they said, well, if you can prove to us you can make them well enough, then you can make them. And so we proved that to them, and they allowed us to do that stuff. So that was a huge milestone, to be given the go-ahead by what was really a legendary manufacturing facility over there. They were making the mess out of those things. And that really lifted our game. And then when everything went electronic, I remember when the shocker came out and everything really blew up with electronics. Once again, James looked at me and said, that's what we got to do. And he saw the Angel and the shocker, and we said, well, we can do better than that. So that's when we did the Cyborg, which was our real first gun.
Yeah.
mean, I've probably skipped a few in between. We also did a bit of license work on the Bushmaster and a couple of other guns in between that sort of built us to that point. But it was about 2003 where we did the Cyborg, and that really revolutionized it for us, because the things that we did with that gun, suddenly it was ours, and everything that was different was applied to our company. If we made a really good autococker, it would just be partially attributed to War Games and the guys who made the autococker, but our successes on our own gun were attributed to the company and really built it. So yeah, I remember that. That was a really exciting time, because at that time when the electronics really took off, it was like an arms race. It felt like World War II, where there was a race to see who could build the fastest plane or the fastest machine gun or the toughest tank. It was exactly like that. It was who could build the gun that would literally just throw paint the fastest. And every year everybody would try it, and there was about, I'm proud of the fact that maybe in 5 or 6 years that we were working on it, we had 2 or 3 years where we had clearly the fastest gun. So getting that right half the time really put us on the map. That got us. It gave us the confidence. It gave us the international acclaim that allowed us to move forward from being just selling in Australia to selling overseas.
Yeah, okay, so that was all off the back of the Cyborg. That was your big push, to take it worldwide?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We were selling regulators, and we were doing air systems and things, but nobody really cares about that stuff. It's the guns.
Yeah, it's not really it's just sort of like one of those things. You got an air system. Yeah, that's like no one really brags about what brand this is.
Exactly.
Not like it can improve performance or anything really.
And we lucked into some things as well, that the gun was so fast, and we made a video that went viral, and that was before things really went viral, and it was really lucky that happened. And then immediately after that, there was a tournament in New Zealand, and the other teams all banded together before the tournament and tried to have, it was only our team, we sent a factory team over, they tried to have our team banned from the tournament for using the gun. And James and I were sitting back looking at this thinking, this is gold. I don't know what would be better, if they banned us or just by trying, but they didn't realize how much publicity it was giving the gun. And when we got back from that New Zealand tournament, we couldn't make enough guns because people had heard that the other teams didn't want to play against it, which, true or not, it probably wasn't true. They were just, looking for any advantage, but they were really helping us out. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, well, that's, any publicity is good publicity. So yeah, that's I haven't never heard about that before, but obviously, yeah, you must have put the fear in the Kiwis if they were worried about that.
Yeah, well, we won the tournament, that was extra luck, and it was just lucky we went over there with the right team. I think it wasn't particularly the gun, but it did help. It helped everything. I remember we were making guns there, and it was only James and I making guns at that time, and we had to work 2 12-hour shifts for about 4 months to just get on top of production.
Wow.
And we were both machining them and building them as we were going in 12-hour shifts.
Yeah, so when you did make that switch from, like autocockers into the electronic guns, was that something that, printing circuit boards and stuff, was that something that you guys sort of had under control as well, or is that a new thing to learn?
No, it's new. We've only really started doing those things in the last 4 or 5 years. So at the time, we just had a local company deal with the electronics. So that was kind of good, and they did such a good job. So the speed of the gun was partially due to their good work, and partially due to James's actual mechanical design of the ram of the gun. So I'm glad that we used an Australian company to do that, and those electronics lasted a long time and were really good.
Yeah, oh, that's cool that and it's good that it's an Aussie company as well. It's good to see, all these Aussie companies stepping up and taking it to the rest of the world.
Yeah, you'd be amazed at how good the innovators Australians are. You find us everywhere, and when we went to do the paintball work with people, they already knew about paintball. That's one thing. Even the Americans, sometimes you go around the States and some people still don't know what paintball is, which is amazing. But
Yeah.
people here who are innovating are just, I think Australians are interested in tech. So, we found that as soon as we mentioned paintball, people were interested and they wanted to work on it. And it gave us a real leg up in the first years because there are a lot of people that were interested to work with us.
Yeah, well, it's yeah, like in the area of pneumatics and stuff like that, just being able to get, I don't know, a paintball gun to do what it does. Like I can sort of understand how like a pump action paintball gun works. That's about as far as my like engineering mind goes. But just to get something to shoot that quick and cycle that fast, it's yeah, it's crazy. I don't know how you
Yeah,
guys do it.
yeah. Well, James is the one. He still does all our drives, and he's a bit of an unsung hero about it. I remember the Cyborg, which was as fast as he made it. He didn't. There's something about him. He doesn't even design on the computer. He'll sketch everything out on a pad, and then he programs the computer, the machine, which I mentioned is CNC controlled. He doesn't. Everyone else plugs into a PC and gets some software to do it. He does it longhand. It's like the Matrix. Like you see him working with ones and zeros and on the screen, and he just does it straight in the machine, which is very unusual. So he's kind of, when it comes to drives and pneumatics, he's got the knack, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's that's crazy. Yeah, it's like I know a bit about like computer programming and stuff, and they speak about guys that are able to work in like assembler and the very like building blocks of computer programs. So that's crazy that yeah, you can take it from a piece of paper and put it into a CNC machine. It's a almost like a what am I trying to say? Like a bit of an artist in his
Yeah, it's just
masterpiece. Yeah,
an unusual skill, that's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Oh, that's crazy. So what is you said it was you and your brother putting the guns together back then. Like what is the scale of the company? Like how is the paintball side of things grown? So is it still just you and your brother putting them together?
No, no, I wouldn't do that anymore. I think I'd be dead by now if I was doing that. Yeah, we sort of expanded. We expanded in a few ways. We've tried so many ways of expansion, and some of them work and some of them didn't. So we set up offices in the US, and so there was a time when the American office was like we'd machine all the parts and ship it over there, and they would anodize and assemble it and sell it. And then if they weren't doing a good job, there was a period where they would anodize it and send it back here, and we had assemblers that we trained up. So we had assemblers here doing it, and we use a combination of all sorts of things. So we have a few different anodizing places that we can do it in because we've found that anodizing is up and down. So we can do it, in the US, we can do it. Here is really hard. We've had too many bad problems with anodizing here. So pretty much the rule is not to anodize in Australia, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay.
So the USA is pretty much still the best place to anodize if you want good anodizing. So we've got a lot of our USA guys remain quite well trained about assembly and working. So we still maintain good techs in Europe and in the USA to supplement assembly or to assemble local finished guns. And the market's changed as well, that there's a lot more custom guns too. So
Yeah.
it's really important that the Americans or the Europeans can assemble things and work on them the same as in the factory.
So when you say custom, you mean like the team colors and that kind of thing?
Not just team. It's pretty common for a one-off to be made in the US as well,
Yeah,
particularly
okay.
the US. that Europe is bigger on team customs, so we'll get 10 guys all the same, or maybe just change a team number or something. But the Americans, someone will come in and say, I'll give you 500 to do this splash, or make me a Warhammer gun, or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
okay, cool.
and they can do it like the where our office is, there's an anodizer locally, and they can do all that stuff. So it makes for a good marketing thing, because if we don't get that sale, the other gun companies will. They're more interested in the finish actually than the gun sometimes.
Yeah, okay. And it is a bit of a shame, like how you're saying that it was an arms race for a while there with the guns to shoot faster, and now with capped ramping, it's sort of taken that away. It's there's not, really it's like air and other improvements you need to make on the guns, but unfortunately it's it's sort of taken the pizzazz out of the guns, I guess. Like you really could you could really make those things like sing and shoot fast, but it's a bit of a shame now.
I'm a bit sad about that. It's making the guns shoot fast was cool. It was also okay for me when ramping came in, because at the time they didn't limit paint, or the caps were still high, that efficiency was then an issue. Ergonomics was always an issue, and so there's always something to work on. There still is, but I'm sad that we can't work on speed, because that was the most fun. There's nothing more fun than putting up a video of your gun shooting 34, 35 with paint, and everyone being excited about that, whereas now they're excited about how it feels, or how it shoots, or the look, or whatever. It's missing that pizzazz, as you say. But I still enjoy the guns. I still enjoy tech and working on it, and there's still plenty in it for us. But it's unfortunate that it's almost like the Formula One cars being limited to 60 Ks. It's a shame.
Yeah, and but I guess that you've still got one big market, like the Woods Ball guys. Some of them still care about speed. Some of them want to shoot as fast as possible.
Yeah,
they don't have ramping there.
This is true, and also the comeback of mech stuff interests me. That I think that there's some interest in there, and things that we can do to make it fun again.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Like everything sort of does that, swings and roundabouts. So I mentioned on an earlier episode that maybe we'll see a pump division come in the next few years if it goes that far back to that retro.
Well, you may as well just go to tube.
Yeah, I don't think it's you never know. We laugh about it, but it could happen one day. So going back to that you said that you sent a team over to New Zealand. Was that with the X Fighters then, or?
Oh no, that was well before the X Fighters. So the X Fighters was only formed because of the AXL.
Yeah, all right.
So it was just a one-off factory team, we called it, because basically we'd made the gun and we hadn't really tested it well, and we wanted the guys to use it in a tournament. And so we got together some guys that we knew and that were pretty good players, and said, hey, we'll give you the guns to use if you guys call yourselves MacDev Factory and go over there and do your best. And yeah, turned out to be a good idea.
Yeah, no, cool. So so speaking of teams and stuff like that, do you and James ever get out there on the field much anymore? Or are you too busy in the shop?
No, I haven't been on a paintball field to shoot at someone for I don't know how many years. I walked off the field one day because of something someone said to me, and said I won't get back on and play tournament paintball ever again. Okay. So I haven't. I've gone to the field to test guns and stuff like that, but to be honest, I was a mediocre player at best. And while I enjoyed playing, I was well in over my head. I only got on the X Fighters team because we needed the numbers, and they needed someone to work on guns, I reckon. But I was lucky enough that they trained me so that I became good enough that I could play. And I think that's the strength of the X Fighters, actually, that there was a period of extremely good culture and training, which has helped me with my design work, because the guys who taught me how to play also taught me how a gun should be to make you play better ergonomically. So yeah, I don't get on the field to anymore to play. To answer your question, James has other pursuits as well, and we both found that it was a little bit, unfortunately, too political in Australia for us to really enjoy.
Yeah, it is a bit of a shame. It does get a bit like that sometimes. We're such a small community, and yeah, there'd be a lot more paintball out there if we could all just put all that aside and just play.
Let's get
But
along, yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
it seems like, I don't know, the newer people coming into the sport seem to just be a bit more about the game, and old grudges have been forgotten and things like that. But yeah, I think it's just you probably I can't speak for that well for other countries, but I'm sure it happens all over the world.
Yeah, I can speak well for it. I've been travelled a lot for it, and it does happen everywhere, so we don't need to feel bad about it. But unfortunately, the smaller the forum, the nastier it can be, or the more difficult it can be. So Australia suffers a little bit from being small, but it happens everywhere, unfortunately.
But yeah, you did, with the X Fighters, you had I never got to play on the team, but I definitely played against them a lot of times, and they were a good bunch of ambassadors. Couldn't have picked a better group of guys for, to have as the flagship team for that period.
Yeah, they were really good for us, really good. We learnt a lot off the field. We formed bonds. Some of those guys were really good. There was a culture. It allowed us to bring in a lot of foreign players. Like, we used the team to bring in some of the foreign players who we use for training and for teaching us things, and they taught us things in the company as well. It just really broadened our horizons. So the X Fighters is a really good period to be involved in for me. I look back on that with real fondness.
Yeah, do you think it's anything we'd ever see in the future, MacDev bringing out a factory team again?
You know what? It's sort of gone now. Factory teams. It's nowadays the go is to find a well-established team or a good team that's up and coming or whatever, and sponsor them. I don't know if you can control a team. We owned the X Fighters because the reason we formed it was because we needed teams for the AXL. We needed franchise teams, and there was no Sydney franchise, so we had to form it ourselves. So it was lucky it turned out well, because it could have been a shocker. We didn't have the best players in Sydney to play for the team, so we had to do our best to train it. But in the end, it worked out well. However, it's not still going today, because we still ran into problems over time, and the culture broke down, and unfortunately the team just had to go. And even when you own the team and you can't hold it together properly, it makes me think that it's not worth trying to go down that route. There's not very many companies that own a team that it just sticks around forever and can be at the top of its game. So it's more useful for us to search out those teams that we've sponsored in the past, like Russian Legion or someone really good, to sponsor, rather than our own factory team, if you know what I mean. There was a lot of pitfalls to a factory team as well. There's, as part of the, some people might wonder if their success is being bought or things like that. So it might help to use an existing team.
Yeah, and it is something. It's different. I found playing, on a team like SWAT, where we did have Action Paintball as like our main. I guess we sort of were their factory team, and it's different when, if it's a group of guys that have gotten together and started a team that way, and they're all buddies, and that's like while they're on that team. Whereas it was a different. Sometimes it was a bit different, because you're all on that team because you were picked for that team, not because you were all the best of friends. So yeah, it can be it's a bit of a different like makeup of the team. So I can definitely see how, like, sometimes it can definitely have some pitfalls.
Yeah,
the wheels can fall off. Yeah, no, it's but yeah, the same. It is I think I didn't really think about it until you said it. Yeah, you don't really see that too often anymore. Like even in the States, there's not, the Dye team or anything like that. There's no. The sponsors seem to be a bit, haphazard, like whatever they can sort of get at the moment. Yeah, it's
Yes. Yeah, so there are still factory teams, but they're never as good. They've all sort of slid down the ladder. So they might be used for testing or whatever, but serious sponsorship, you look for a team that's well managed and run independently, I think.
Yeah, and things are constantly changing at the top end as well. It's of the sport. We're starting to see some outside paintball interest into the sponsorship role as well. So it's exciting to see what's in the future for that side of things. Paintball sponsorship and everything. So hopefully it brings more money into the sport, more players.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, anything that helps teams. That's one thing I've known from being involved in the teams is always a grind, right? With money or travel or time with the family. So anything that can help the guys to buy paint and not feel so under the pump, but it's like the holy grail that is not achieved very often in paintball.
Yeah, and it is it's something. These guys, even the ones really at the top of their game, they're just barely scraping together wages sometimes. They're not they're not living like 6-figure salaries or anything like that.
No, yeah, there's probably a handful of teams where you'd say, yeah, they're really, really comfortable. I can say that from experience.
Yeah, a little bit off track, but my biggest fear for that kind of thing is that just what the life after paintball. I worry about some of these guys that they might have been involved in the sport since they left school, and that's really all they've done. And they hit 30, they don't play anymore, and they're sort of left with this strange life where hopefully they've got a career in, with like a company like yours or something like manufacturing, they can get into the paintball realm. Otherwise, they sort of just, I've seen a few guys just float because they've got no skills or anything. All they know how to do is play paintball. So it's it's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, it is, but there's plenty of people that make a go of it. So most of the people in paintball have been players. Like in the industry, most of them have been players at some time or another. Or you look at the Field 1 companies, the Dynasty guys banding together because they were getting a bit old and wanted to make sure that exactly what you say, and that's kind of worked for them. So I think there's plenty of opportunity.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, do you guys have any players working for you or overseas? Like, do you have any ex-players or anything like that working?
None of that are really high profile. Like our manager in the US is a really good player from Div 1 semi-pro, which is real good in the US.
Oh yeah,
that's
better than our pro.
Yeah, so I mean we brought him over here when we needed help with the team, and he was carving it up, having a great time. It was like a playland for him. We got
what was his name? Sorry,
Ryan Podesta.
Yeah, okay.
So you know him from Mama's Boys, probably his most famous team.
Yeah, right. I struggle enough to follow Aussie paintball as it is for overseas.
Well, I don't know if you know Jerry Devereaux.
Yeah.
So Jerry still works for us. They're in the States.
Cool. Yeah.
And our Europe manager Federico's quite a good player too. So he plays with Droogs usually, but he's easily good enough to handle himself on the second squad of Joy Division, I'd say, or something like that.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, no, it's always good to see these guys that I guess like any brand, it's good to have a bit of player knowledge and stuff like that, a bit of a different input.
Yeah, for sure. We've got more people that are players involved in the company that aren't. So James and I are probably outliers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you said all the anodizing and assembly happens overseas. So is every MacDev gun still made in Australia?
Yes. So we machine it all here, get it all as close to finished as we can here in Australia before we send it out. Particularly the drive system. So I try to explain it to people this way, that if the gun was a car, we make the engine and finish it completely and test it before it goes anywhere. The body of the car and all the outside, which is, like your gun body and your frame and stuff, we machine it all, but we don't anodize it or assemble all the things into it. Then we send it out to be finished and anodized and assembled and all that stuff. But the drive itself and the solenoid and these things that really make it work, they're completely finished and tested and just ready to put in the finished product. So
Yeah, awesome.
that's how we do it.
Yeah. So, and obviously it's probably a bit easier to deal with the overseas market sometimes, to as far as customs and or licensing and that kind of stuff goes.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, once it goes to the US, it's just nothing. It's a toy, so that's easy. So our biggest issue has always been if something has to come back here for warranty, because it can't. So that's why we had to set up really good offices overseas, because we couldn't have guns coming back for minor things. In fact, no, it doesn't come back for anything. If a gun can't be fixed overseas, then it just has to be replaced. Which makes it harder for us, but luckily it doesn't really happen very much anymore. So yeah, we're in a sort of a unusual situation, put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. So when you manufacture the guns here, do they have to have serial numbers?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So the actual letter of the law is that it's not really a gun until we put a serial number on it.
Yeah.
But they get very upset if we have guns laying around without serial numbers on it.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of legality and kind of detail about when we put it on there as well. The gun's
Yeah.
kind of, once it's finished, it's got to have the serial number on it.
Because I did notice that back when I first started playing, like you guys would bring guns from New Zealand, say, and we need to quickly just scratch a serial number on it so we can bring it over. But I think like I haven't really had much to do with Europe, but a lot of European countries, they like serial numbers on the paintball guns as
Yeah,
well,
they
don't
do.
they?
Yeah, and Europe has got, I don't know if you know about their F stamping system. Do you know about that?
No, I don't know.
They've got, because in Germany, the letter of the law is that you can't shoot more than about 275 feet per second, which is different everywhere else. So they devise a system where they've got a stamp, which is like a hard stamp that they punch into the gun to show that it's passed that test. And then, of course, the person just pulls out all the springs and reworks it up to shoot 300.
Yeah.
So they're familiar with that, having like all these marks on the gun to denote where it's come from and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So it's that's it. It sounds like it's enough of a headache just trying to deal with Australian laws, let alone every other country all across Europe and America.
Yeah, well, it's really only us and the Germans. I mean, there's actually a minefield of everything. Like dealing with the world, it might not be law to do with the guns. Like for instance, South America, it's just hard to get a gun past customs because not because they're not allowed, but because when they see a gun, they think that needs an extra, let's call it a bribe, to
Yeah.
get it
Okay.
past.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to pay that, and so there's this ongoing kind of game of cat and mouse of getting guns into South America. So this kind of minefield of every area has its own thing to worry about.
And do you guys deal much through Asia as well?
Not as much as we used to. We had a boom probably about 10 years ago, and then yeah, we got shut out of the market pretty effectively. It's on its way heading back in. We've just started to make real good inroads, but it's another thing that's political, and if you get on the wrong side of politics, sometimes it can cost you sales. It definitely happened here. It's happened to us in Asia, but thankfully they're the two smallest world markets, I guess.
Yeah, well, like I just remember the few times I've been over to Asia and in Thailand, Malaysia, and you're asking the guys like, so what's the deal with paintball guns here? Like, what's the legalities? And I don't think I got the same answer twice. Like people can't. I don't think the locals know. They just sort of you just sort of get them. Like yeah, that they're not really quite sure. So I think they're similar to here. Like they just for a while they're probably just going to be this thing. Like, what is it? It's not really a gun, but it's not a toy. It just
Yeah, with Malaysia particularly, they suddenly decided, because it was always illegal, but a blind eye was turned to it, and then there was a change in the government thinking, and they suddenly just clamped down, and then everybody went into a little hole. So they shut down paintball effectively for about 3 years. So that's why people are confused about what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do over there.
Yeah, and well, I've even heard similar things about Japan. Like, I know paintball there. I think the feet per second is 150 or something they've got to stick to. Yeah, it sounds like some of those countries have bad laws when it comes to paintball. It's
Yeah, it's
shame.
the backward ones pretty much. When I say backward, I mean that the paintball hasn't had enough time to lobby, so that's what's made them backward. And Asia's an interesting one because there's a really strong lobbyer over there, and he's done such an amazing job. And I think that's why there was a blind eye turned for so long, and then for some reason he let it slip, and the whole thing fell apart. So it was kind of like our event with Port Arthur, where suddenly all hell broke loose. That's the issue with paintball, unfortunately, that the equipment makes it hard to grow.
Yeah, it's it's not like soccer. You can't just take the footy down the park and kick it around. You sort of there's a lot involved to setting up a paintball game, and yeah, it's not as it is hard to understand for some people, even to explain it to people what it is.
Yeah,
So
well, but we're making inroads. It's part of what makes it fun as well, isn't it? So,
yeah.
shooting someone with a gun, it makes it fun.
Yeah, well, it is one of those things, it's something you can't do every day. So it's no, it's amazing. So yeah, it would be good to see. I think paintball needs one of those. It seems very disjointed around the world. It needs one of those. Like, we need a worldwide body or something to be able to really get it into.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
yeah, good luck getting that happening.
Yeah, I only giggle because it's been done, or the attempt's been made about 3 times that I've seen, and I'm sure people have tried more times than that, but it just never works. Unfortunately, if only it could work.
Yeah, there's just too many too many different people that are interested in trying to make money out of it. So
Yeah, but that's not even the reason, because if it grows, everybody makes more money. So
yeah,
it's
okay,
not
I
it's
guess that's
not
true.
that it's small-mindedness, or somebody trying to make sure that they own their little piece rather than let it grow so that everyone can own the same amount of pieces that are all add up to much bigger. That's what it is. I've traveled a lot for paintball, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's what I see is the right word for it is small-mindedness, unfortunately, in local smaller places that choke things off.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, I haven't really traveled much outside of Australia and Asia, but even in that small thing, what you say pretty much is true. It's yeah, sometimes it can just be, it's just like two two main bodies, and they just can't get along, and that's it. That's as far as it goes, and the whole pool of players ends up being divided. Um, yeah, and it just can't ever really get past there. So it's it's a shame, but maybe one day it'll happen.
Yeah, well, if we can get grassroots going in Australia, I see that as the difference between us and the US. That the US is really it's grassroots movement, which is why paintball won't die over there, because there's guys that don't travel more than 20 minutes because there's 3 fields there, and you can go to any one of them, and you don't get static about having been at the other one the weekend before. And it just is a culture of you can just go to any field and it's all fine, and you can bring your gun and you can bring your paint, and there's no that was always the thing holding you back, is that if the field operator's worried about where you've got your paint from 1 week to the next, or where you bought your gun from, or anything like that, it creates a culture of sort of fear or panic, and gets people uncomfortable and then they leave the sport. That doesn't happen in the US.
Yeah, they are a bit lucky there. That they are a bit spoilt for choice. I've heard it gets a bit different like that, around the country in like New South Wales with our laws, and in Victoria with our laws, like they're quite strict. But in Western Australia, they had that for a while there. The way it was explained to me, that they could sort of open up fields wherever they wanted, so there was it was quite easy to set up a field there. So they did have that for a while. It sounded, lots of options to play, so lots of people getting into the sport. But I think that's slowly drifted away over the last few years. It's a shame.
It is. There was a while there that I thought, Western Australia would show everybody the right way, but turns out not, which is a shame.
Yeah, but if we keep getting these advancements in the laws, it maybe one day.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, what we really need is numbers. Numbers in the sport.
Yeah, and yeah, like you say, at a grassroots level, guys, just coming in and enjoying it for what it is, not taking it too serious.
Exactly.
Yeah. So while I got you on the show here, a question I've been asking all my guests. Do you think there's anyone, from the history of paintball that when you've been involved that you would think would be a good fit for the show?
Yes. There's knowing who you've had on before. You've picked some good people, and you could probably want to, just for interest's sake of having his hands in every pie or seeing just about everything happen, you might want to talk to Peter Russell.
Yeah. No, it's he's a good name to have. If I can, I know he's off in America at the moment, so might have to check out some time zones and see if we can get him on.
I guarantee you he'll want to talk about himself.
Yeah. No, it's good. He's got a lot of stories to tell. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So while you've got the air and you're on here, was there anyone that, like, normally this is where I ask for people to shout out to sponsors. So was there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to? Anyone in the sport that sort of helped you that you'd like to thank while you're on the line?
Well, there's a lot of people. There's all the old ex-fighters guys, you know who you are, who kept me on board even when they had to carry me. And pretty much anyone who's sort of been involved and helped us and used our gear and thought well of us, like we really appreciate it. It doesn't matter how well we do anywhere, whatever we do in Australia always makes us feel better. So, you guys are appreciated.
Oh, that's cool. It's it's good. I watch the company and how big you guys are becoming overseas, and I often thought about that. Like, I wonder if you guys still, even if your eyes are always elsewhere. But it's good to hear that you are. Yeah, it's good to
know.
When
we sell a gun here in Australia, it's like we've sold 100 overseas. That's the feeling. It's just it's nicer to sell it here. That's how we feel.
Yeah, and it's it's like I said earlier, it's good to see Aussie companies doing things, and everyone with all this COVID-19 stuff is saying, oh, we're going to start buying Aussie again. So now's our chance. We can start supporting an Aussie company.
Yeah, well, we're always here.
Yeah. So if people want to get in touch with the guys in Australia, like where would be the best way to follow what MacDev's doing in Australia?
You can go to our main website, which is MacDevPaintball.com, and just hit us up on the email, or you can see us on Facebook, and we're always on there, just kind of lurking around. It is a bit international, but the world's so small. You can just hit us up, and I'm in contact with Australian guys all the time.
Yeah, it is cool to see. All the different, like you said, the cooking competitions and stuff like that going on. So yeah, it's the world is a smaller place these days with technology.
Yeah, and that's blowing up, and there's no Australians on there. So anyone who wants to put their hand up, give us a buzz for season 2. They're already talking season 2 on it because it's been so successful.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely keep in touch. We might see some Aussies on there. It'll be good to see.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks so much for chatting to me, Scott.
Yeah, no worries at all. Thanks for stopping in and giving up your time.
No worries at all.
That's a wrap on another episode of Down Under Paintball. Thank you once again to Bourke Grundy for dropping by and having a chat. Hope you guys enjoyed that one as much as I did. So don't forget, if you want to support the show, there is a Patreon that you can do that through. Just search out Down Under Paintball on the website Patreon. There's also a video version of the show on YouTube and Facebook. If you want to check that out, just search Down Under Paintball. We are now getting closer and closer to those lockdowns being lifted, seen all around the country, all except New South Wales, that we are back out playing paintball in limited numbers, but it's still good to see. Just wanted to leave everyone with a little tidbit, something I heard on another podcast. You know, all these people are talking about on their Facebooks that coming out of this lockdown that we have to have learn how to play guitar or learn how to bake something. You know, if you just got through this and you didn't come out with a brand new skill, don't feel so bad. I think just getting through this whole ordeal in this lockdown and coming out the other side sane is a massive achievement in its own. So remember everyone, just stay safe out there, stay sane and look after each other, and let's all hopefully see each other on the paintball field in the next few weeks. Thank you once again everybody for tuning in and checking this out. I'm Scott and you're listening to Down Under Paintball. See you next week.